What's up, everybody? Thank you for tuning into College Knowledge by Grand Canyon University Thunder Vision. My goal is to inspire 7th and 8th grade students to be ready for high school and college. We're starting a 10-part series called 10 Ways to be Successful in High School. Do note that every tip I'm going to give you guys are things you can be doing now in middle school to prepare for high school. That being said, let's dive right in. Tip number 1, set short-term and long-term goals. Every person might define those types of goals differently, but for now, here's how we're going to define them. Short-term goals are more nearsighted. It's something that you can complete in maybe a few days or a few weeks' time. It shouldn't be any longer than 6 months. Long-term goals are far-sighted. It's something that you can dream about and envision yourself doing down in the future. It'll be 6 months, a year, multiple years, maybe even a decade. Alright, let's look at some examples of some short-term goals. Your first short-term goal could be that you want to finish all of your online schooling this week a day early. That way you have Friday off. Your second goal could just be keeping up with your assignments for the rest of online schooling this semester, even if they aren't being graded right now during coronavirus. Alright, so as you can see, both of these goals are short-term, less than 6 months. What I really want to point out with these goals is what is driving them. If you remember the first one I mentioned at the end, that way you can have Friday off of school this week. That's the motivation. You probably don't realize it, but we actually all do this on a daily basis in our lives. Try to recognize yourself doing that. Try to intentionally motivate yourself by giving yourself treats along the day. It could be 30 minutes of video games once you finish your online test. You know yourself best. You know what would motivate you. Alright, let's look at the motivation for that second short-term goal example. There may be little to no motivation right now to be finishing out the semester, especially if your school isn't grading your work. It is wise to keep our minds jogged and to keep learning. That way we don't feel super rusty and behind when we start school again. So this is a short-term goal with a more long-term motivation. We're thinking about next year. So speaking of long-term motivation, let's start talking about long-term goals. So like we said, long-term goals are something that you envision for yourself way in the future. Becoming a famous YouTuber, long-term goal. Graduating high school, that's a great long-term goal. My personal favorite long-term goal, becoming a lope. Alright, the question with these long-term goals is how do you make it happen once you think of it? It takes a lot of thinking, it takes a lot of planning, it takes a lot of short-term goals. Think of it as a ladder towards success. You don't get to the top of the ladder without knowing what each rung of the ladder is. Once you climb one rung of the ladder, you're on to the next one. This is what makes both long and short-term goals so important. Alright guys, I hope this video has inspired you to be thinking ahead, to be setting goals for yourself. That way you can really find success. That being said, lopes out.